Aloha, and welcome to SUP FM, the podcast for stand-up paddleboarders everywhere. So with no further ado, let's get out on the water and on with the show. Here are your hosts, Nick and Simon.
Good morning, Simon. How are you doing?
I'm outstanding, thank you. The sun's shining, the birds are singing. It's a great day. I need to get out on the water.
Well, I was out in the water this morning and it was fantastic. Actually, it was merging on sort of unsafe conditions. It was getting to be 15 knots and I was taking some and teaching some friends, but so we had to call it off a little bit. But that actually brings us to the subject of water safety and something that you and I are both really concerned about, right?
Absolutely. Well, we've all noticed the huge explosion in paddleboarders over the last few months, and particularly since lockdown, which is an absolutely fantastic result for the industry. But obviously, there are some dangers involved in that as well, which is replicated in all of the Facebook groups that I've ever gone into, which is people who are absolutely intent on safe paddling, knowledge about tides and winds, and what do they wear and so on. And we've put together over the last few weeks and soon to be released some information in that regard, haven't we?
Intensely researched and drawing on all our knowledge over the years, because you started paddling a good few years ago, so did I. We've both done multiple stand-up paddle certifications, and we've both done a lot of research into this, and we're doing a video course which will be coming to your screen soon. So we're really excited about that. So we're just giving you a little heads up before it gets in, but it's going to be a SUP safety course that you'll be able to do whenever you want, and it's all online through video. So that's really exciting for us. And one of those components that we talk about within the course is taking your phone with you and how important it is to have your phone. There are a load of apps that can help you in your stand-up paddling. So we've compiled a list of the best apps.
And that's independent of the course. We do talk about apps on the course itself, but you don't have to wait for that. Just go on to supfm.show and sign up for our email list, and you will get that list of apps absolutely free. And it's all the apps that we use to plan our trips, and also actually there's a couple that we use to amuse ourselves as well, aren't there?
Yeah. But this week we've got Christian Shaw all the way from Santa Cruz. Actually, he was born in New York, but we'll find out more about where he's from and where he's been to university. And he created this organization called Plastic Tides.
So very appropriate for this month, and Plastic Free July, isn't it?
Yeah, Plastic Free July. Yeah, so we've actually got a bit of a thread going through here with Plastic Free July. We had SUP Garbage Man on, and
we kicked off with SUP Garbage Man. Incredible response to his episode, and love speaking to him. And it's great to get Christian on. As you said, New York to Santa Cruz, isn't he?
He started Plastic Tides. Well, you can find out how he started Plastic Tides by listening to the episode. But I think essentially he's helping young kids to understand the dangers of plastic and to pick them up and show them all the terrible things that plastic is causing to our oceans. And as all of us out there, every time we go out and you see a bit of plastic, hopefully you'll pick it up and bring plastic back and even mark it on the Plastic Patrol app. But there's just so much of it out there. And I think we need to actually talk about this. It's a real big issue. And it's even more so in the forefront of our minds as stand-up paddlers. So he's weaved stand-up paddle into his mission. And it's an interesting story. And there's so much more to talk to him about. So I think we'd love to try and get him back. But here we go. Listen to Christian Shaw from Plastic Tides. Christian Shaw, welcome to the SUP FM podcast. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Nick. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, where are you at the moment right now?
I'm in Santa Cruz, California.
So for those people out there who don't know California so well, like me, whereabouts is Santa Cruz? North or south of LA or near San Francisco or what?
Santa Cruz is about an hour and a half south from San Francisco and is actually almost right in the center of the state. A lot of people think of sort of Santa Cruz, San Francisco area as Northern California, but if you look at the map, it's really right in the middle just about. So about 6 hours from LA and pretty close to San Francisco.
Wow, 6 hours drive from LA. That's hectic, huh?
Yeah, honestly, I don't really find too many reasons to head that way, so.
Yeah, it sounds like the land of smog. I was just interviewing Kristen Thomas from LA, yes, a couple of weeks ago, and something like, I think we worked it out, as 18 million people in LA, which is crazy.
Yeah, the urban sprawl, it's one of the most sprawled cities in the world, to my knowledge. And anyway, there's a lot of good things going on there, but not my cup of tea.
Yeah, yeah. So your CV reads like you could be the perfect adventure man: a dive master, wilderness first aid, whitewater SUP instructor. What is the goal? What is your dream job when you were 20?
When I was 20, I would say I was really interested in combining my interest in sustainability and conservation, with that, my adventure prone tendencies and a passion for water sports and the ocean. And so I could say I, saw myself getting into something, sailing around, taking people diving, kiting, surfing, things like that. But I didn't really have a really clear vision for what I was going to do until a couple years later, as I progressed through my college career and my studies and stuff. But yeah, it's I think it's in a way, I guess I could say, I would have envisioned myself doing what I'm doing now. However, one thing that I do look forward to getting back into more, especially as hopefully we come out of this pandemic, is the guiding aspect, and really getting out there into the backcountry, and teaching people, your skills and knowledge. So
Yeah, it's a really rewarding. It's a really rewarding work, isn't it? Guiding. I mean, I used to be a river guide and a field guide on a game lodge, and also a stand-up paddle instructor. So it's very rewarding when you see, you sharing the wild with people. It's a really exciting job.
yeah, it is. And I find that I'm, sort of a natural teacher. I really enjoy, my instruction in whitewater paddleboarding and, other sorts of paddling disciplines, and kite surfing, and yeah, really anything. And I'm also fancy myself, to be a bit of a naturalist. I kind of think that's a really fun path to lead, throughout your life. Just sort of, gradually, accruing knowledge about the world around you and all the different aspects.
Yeah. So were you born with? I mean, we're not born with it, but I mean, like in your early years, were you exposed to the outdoors by your parents? And was it part of your life growing up?
I was, absolutely. Yeah, I grew up in Ithaca, New York, in upstate New York, and my mom's a science teacher, and my parents are both, really adventurous and spent a lot of time in the outdoors, and going to the coast, exploring tide pools, hiking, camping, heading out to the Isle Shoals off of Maine, New Hampshire, where my parents had studied when they were in college. So I grew up landlocked, but had a lot of exposure to the ocean and to the outdoors at a young age.
That's wonderful.
Just
Yeah, it's the best way to grow up, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you were living in upstate New York. Is it pretty easy to zip down to Cornell University, because that's where you did a BSc, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, Cornell is actually in Ithaca, um, so that's in part how I ended up at Cornell, is that it's in my hometown, and it took some work to get in there, but it was somewhat destined to go there since I was a really young kid. So it was kind of a dream come true in a sense.
Because it's hard to get in, right? Because it's an Ivy League university, right? One of the top ones in the US, right?
It is, yes, it is. Yeah, and anyone who's seen The Office will know what Cornell University is. I don't know if you're familiar with that show, but a really popular comedy in the
The Office, yes.
Yeah,
The Office. Yeah. Because they had a run in the UK, and then they did a US based version as well.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Actually, I need to give the credit where it's due there. That was a UK production first. But yeah, anyway, there's a character who went to Cornell in that show, and he's always reminding everyone about it, which is pretty funny.
Oh, brilliant.
But yeah, great university, and really, really good place to develop some skills and knowledge, and interact with a lot of really cool people.
So is that where you did environmental studies?
That's right. Yes, I studied sustainability, sort of from an interdisciplinary perspective. I had maybe a non-traditional path through university. I was in a more really heavy science-paced sustainability major when I first started out. and managed to escape from that and the gnarly chemistry that was kicking my butt, and broaden my horizons a little bit to be able to focus more on sustainability from, an interdisciplinary perspective, learning, about, the different technologies and ways you can approach sustainability issues and the business side, and taking classes in sustainable agriculture and mushroom foraging, and I had opportunity to take the wines class at Cornell in the hotel school. I took a really valuable negotiations class in the hotel school as well. That served me countless times throughout my life. So it's an interesting path, but I gained a lot of knowledge around sustainability, and I also completed a business minor, which helps out now as I run a small bootstrap nonprofit, and I'm also involved in a few small businesses.
Mm-hmm. Is that plastic tides that you're referring to? Because I'm wondering how you went from the university through to plastic tides. How did you end up?
Yeah, so it's a pretty fun story. It's actually all really connected. Plastic tides, the sort of inception point for plastic tides, you could put at a National Geographic Young Explorers Grant Conference that I attended along with my co-founders in the fall of 2012. And from there, we just had this idea, and we knew that we wanted to combine our passion for the outdoors and adventure with sustainability and conservation. And as we were approaching graduation, we were able to put together this project, which started out as a kiteboarding expedition to basically kiteboard across this, garbage dump in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and get drone or helicopter aerial footage to, open everyone's eyes to this issue of plastic pollution. And we soon learned that that was not feasible, firstly, because no such thing exists. You couldn't actually see it from the air because it's more like a plastic smog that's distributed, throughout the water column. And you could be sailing through the Pacific.
Are you talking about the Pacific Gyre?
Yes. Yeah, I'm talking about the Pacific Gyre. Yeah, so that, that project, despite how cool it sounded, wasn't really feasible for a number of reasons. But, firstly, because, you can't actually see the Pacific garbage patch from the air or even from the side of a boat if you're not actually paying attention, because it's a lot of small plastics, sort of in this soup or smog stratified through the water column. And so what started out as this grand idea in the middle of the Pacific was distilled down to a 10-day self-support stand-up paddleboard expedition around Bermuda. And we designed a trawl to pull behind our paddleboards and sample surface plastics. And we filmed the entire trip for an educational web series. And then we did a dozen school visits on Bermuda directly following. And the whole idea was to basically combine adventure and science to create this fun, engaging platform to address plastic pollution. Because at that time, there were a couple big players, Five Gyres and a few others, addressing the issue, but it was, from this very, direct, this is the issue kind of approach, and no one was coming at it from, something that was creative and engaging and fun. And so we wanted to do that and, really inspire young people along the way.
Okay, and how did you go about getting funding for that trip? And as from the business side of things of plastic tides, how did that kick off? Because imagine going to an investor and saying, "Hey, we want to go and do this fun trip in Bermudas." He's going to be like, really? It sounds like you're going to have a whole bunch of fun."
It's remarkable. You're not the first person to have that sort of reaction, and it's honestly somewhat frustrating because if people knew the reality of what it takes to do something like this, it's fun is the last thing that comes to mind. It's type 2 or sometimes type 3 fun, but despite actually being in a beautiful location like Bermuda, the reason that we chose Bermuda is because it's situated in the North Atlantic Gyre, and so it's actually an island that gives you really wonderful access to this area of the ocean that has a similar effect from plastic pollution like the Pacific. And so in terms of back to your question, though, getting resources and support for the trip, that was challenging, but I think we had a lot of success early on, given where we were, we're coming from. We had put together something fairly unique, and we were able to get a number of pretty big brands like Cliff Bar and Goal Zero, Camelback, Backpackers Pantry, companies like that to help out, particularly on the gear front. And we also ran a Kickstarter campaign and got a lot of support from friends and family through that avenue to make it all happen.
Well, that's excellent. And what happened to the scientific information that you picked up on the trip?
Yeah, so that was our first foray into, using our paddleboards as research vessels. And we collected surface samples along with our partners at the Plastic Ocean Project. And we analyzed those samples, and those were shared, through their networks. And then we also took samples through for a program called Adventure Scientists, and they were doing a global microplastic survey. And those samples can actually be found, or the results from those samples can be found on their website. They have a really amazing visualization. It's this global map. And this is a project that they set out in 2014 and ran through maybe 2018. And the goal was to, basically engage. The whole mission of Adventure Scientists is connecting scientists with adventurers in the field who can get them, samples from potentially hard to get to locations. Jeremy Jones, pro snowboarder, has worked with them a lot as one of the main spokespeople for the group. And so they did this global microplastics project that the aim was to basically visually illustrate the scale of this issue with samples of microplastics from all over the world. And so we started working with them on that first expedition around Bermuda, and you can see the results from those samples on their website. And we ended up taking samples for that project from probably a dozen different locations, from the River Thames to alpine lakes near Chamonix to West Australia and Hawaii and anywhere in between. So
Oh, excellent. Yeah. Sounds like a good trip. But should we talk a little bit about the global impact of plastic and how massive it was? Because obviously it's a massive thing to try and tackle. I know Plastic Oceans have stated the following: we're producing over 300 million tons of plastic every year, 50% of which is for single-use purposes, utilized for just a few moments. But on the planet for at least several hundred years, I think we all know this right now, but more than 8 million tons of plastic is dumped into our oceans every year. So how do you feel about that? I mean, isn't it just such a mind-bending problem? It's impossible. Doesn't it get you frustrated?
It's one of those things that the numbers are really staggering, but I've been doing this officially since 2014 and really, looking into the issue more significantly since, I would say, 2011, 2012. And fortunately, I think I'm pretty long past that stage. I've been working on this issue for so long that, I really just keep myself focused on the positive things that we're doing. And also, having been in this space since then, it's really inspiring to see the progress that we've made, especially around 2017, 2018, when the BBC and Sky News partnered up and they made plastic pollution a big thing, for a year. And then you see, National Geographic jumped on board, and from there, there was an explosion in the space. Hundreds of new organizations popped up, and the issue has really come into the mainstream. And so that provides a lot of positivity for me. I think, despite the enormity of the issue and the way that it's affecting our oceans currently, and some of the factors like the forces behind big oil and the way that connects to plastic, and the goals that the plastic industry has to double their output, those things can be somewhat ominous, but at the end of the day, consumers rule. And as we, continue to become a more educated populace, we have the capacity to influence that, So, at the end of the day, as much as any company wants to sell a single-use plastic, someone still has to buy it.
But it's becoming socially unacceptable to even buy drinks with straws. I mean, just about an hour ago, I was down at a cafe and they served me a smoothie with a straw, and I didn't touch it because I think a lot of people are feeling that, especially in Europe. I don't know, what is it like in the States? Are they feeling that sort of social angst of actually using single-use plastic?
Absolutely. And I think that it's becoming, akin to throwing your cigarette butt on the ground. It's, or spitting on the street or, leaving your gum on the sidewalk. It's, starting to become something that's being normalized into society as something that, we recognize as pollution, as hazardous, as wasteful, as something that, an upstanding global citizen doesn't want to engage with. So, I just think that as long as we keep moving in the right direction, that I do think that there's a positive outcome down the road in the plastic space, especially due to the rate of innovation as well. So, I think that this sort of combination of a bottom up, consumer choice driven approach and a top down, industry research based approach is really where we're going to see the most success. And I think we're seeing that, there's a lot of innovation in the, biodegradability space, people using, for instance, there's a really awesome company here in Santa Cruz called Cruz Foam that is using chitin from, shrimp shells to make like a solid polyurethane type closed cell foam that, they're talking with companies like Pepsi about, replacing the foam that goes, above and below a pallet of Pepsi cans or like a case of Pepsi cans from, a petroleum based foam to something like this. And so as we see those sorts of shifts to take over as well, it's
Yeah, there are tons of options, but that's the kind of frustrating thing. Is it like, if you look at it from a statistics point of view, do you think we'll ever win the war on plastic? And do you have any figures that can try and suggest that we're going in the right direction?
I can tell you that our youth program, the Global Youth Mentorship Program, has stopped over 2 million plastic utensils from going into the waste stream to date, and is going strong. And so, that's one positive number I can give you in terms of
That's great.
just what we've done as an organization. And yeah, I mean, I don't have that many statistics, on hand, that type of thing. But I can just tell you from, being in the space and paying close attention to it that we're definitely moving in that direction.
Oh, that's good news, because sometimes it feels kind of absolutely like we're never going to win the war. But you've created a community called Rising Tide, right? How big is that, and how fast has it grown?
The Rising Tide has over 3,000 members now, and that's basically just our email subscriber list is the Rising Tide. And so when you go to our website, you're joining that group, and that's how we stay connected with our sort of core community. And it's growing really quickly. We're it's been something that we actually haven't been focusing on that specifically until more recently. And so we're hoping to see a lot of growth in that community.
Yeah, I'm sure you get lots of people, because and how does that relate to the sorry, what is the name of the youth community that you're building as well?
Yeah, certainly. So our Global Youth Mentorship Program is our main focus right now as an organization. And we combine motivated youth in middle or high school with mentors who can support them through projects that are going to have a lasting impact in their school or community. And so these projects can be anything from, mitigating plastic utensils. So, replacing plastic utensils with a sustainable alternative, which, we've had a lot of success with, to planting an orchard in underutilized space around the school so that students have access to plastic-free, nutritious fruits, certain times of the year, to testing the water coming out of the drinking fountains and maybe upgrading the hydration infrastructure so students feel more comfortable refilling their bottles and helping to ingrain that sort of reuse, refill culture into schools. And so there's all these different types of projects that students can engage with that have, a huge impact, and we've been able to quantify that impact, which really helps, garner support for the program. And, what we found is that by simply providing this support structure and mentorship for students, they're able to achieve so much more and really reach their potential compared to trying to go it alone. Because when you're that age, despite being the most motivated, creative, inspired student, there's still a lot of challenges, and it can just be, really daunting to try and see a project through to completion. And so having the agency and the resources, the support from Plastic Tides and their individual mentors, allows these students to have a hugely amplified impact and one that ripples out through their community.
Excellent, yeah, because they're the future leaders of the world, aren't they?
They are. And as much as we love working with adults and educating adults, the reality is that, like you said, kids are the future, and they're so much more receptive to these things. And so, from the beginning, Plastic Tides, has really been about inspiring youth and supporting, youth to have an impact.
Yeah, it's amazing. My 12-year-old daughter, I learn from her every day. She's always saying, Dad, this is this and this is this. And it's great from an environmental perspective. We touched on this in previous podcasts with other interviews, but why do you reckon paddleboarding is a perfect motivator for people to get involved in environmental activism? I mean, you've used paddleboarding on a lot of your expeditions as well, right? So why choose paddleboarding?
Paddleboarding is an amazing vehicle for change. We chose paddleboarding back in 2014. At that time, it was arguably the fastest growing sport in the world. We were still on that steep, up curve in the industry. And, we saw there were only really a few people out there doing multi-day self-support paddleboard stuff. And, it was unique, it was interesting, and we saw that it was something that was really accessible to, a huge range of people, anyone from someone charging out at Peahi to, your grandma, down at the lake house next to the dock. And, being able to have that platform combined with our mission just seemed like a perfect fit. And, at the end of the day, it was also really fun. I mean, we got into paddleboarding and we're having a ton of fun with it, and, had come from sort of a more traditional canoeing, kayaking, paddle sports and tripping background. And, I think anyone in the paddleboarding space could agree that being able to stand up on your board, and it's just a much more pleasurable way to, to travel on a
Absolutely. I can second that for sure. So do you remember the very first time you ever stepped onto a stand-up paddleboard? Like, whereabout was it and what were you doing? And
I do, Nick. I do. That's a great question. And it was in a small town called Dongra up in West Australia. So I had the opportunity to head out to West Australia while I was in university for a study abroad semester. And I went out there to kite surf, actually, which I ended up doing a ton of kite surfing, but it was more transformational in the surfing realm for me as like an overall experience. But my first place that I went to right when I got into Perth, I met up with this guy that I had connected with online, and we went north to this event called Kite Stock. And at that time I was, a huge kiteboarding fanatic. I'm still really into kiting. But it was what I was really living for at that time. And we got up there, and, really cool little town, all these pro kiters around, super psyched. And, first day rolls around, no wind. And that was the event. It was only a few days, and the wind forecast was dismal, but fortunately there was some crew there from Air Rush kiteboarding, and they had a bunch of starboard SUPs as well. And so there was some fun little waves coming in, and of course there was no wind, so it was pretty glassy out. And just got out there on the paddleboard, and honestly was immediately hooked, and just saw the potential for going out there and just catching these little, shin knee-high waves, for hours, and I had an absolute blast.
that's amazing.
I was sold.
So you learned to sup at Kitestock. I mean, that's such a cool name for an event, and then there's no wind. What a letdown.
I know, man. It was such a fun event, and it was pretty funny too. Actually, this guy from Zimbabwe, Phil, that I connected with, we get in the car and we're driving up there, and I've just known this guy for maybe an hour, and we're chatting. Of course, we connect around the kiting issue. We're all stoked out, and he's like, so I got to ask you something. So there's this costume contest they have every year, and I really want to win this year. So I went all out. I got a horse costume.
Oh my god!
But I need you to be the ass. And so yeah, I was the ass of the horse, and we sure as hell won that damn contest.
Oh, fantastic! What a result!
Yeah, it was pretty fun. It was a good hear.
You should have tried to get the ass onto the paddleboard, or both of you guys onto the paddleboard at the same time. That would have been hilarious.
I know, we were up on stage with the horse, but that would have been good fun getting out there on the paddleboard.
But talking about SUPs, I mean, I was looking at the video of and we'll drop that in the show notes as well, the video of your Bermuda adventure expedition that you did initially with plastic tides. And you guys had some catamaran SUPs, which I've never seen before in my life. How did those come about? Was it early days or?
Yeah, so, really early days. I got connected with Live Water Sports, who makes the catamaran hull boards. When I was doing some work down in the Florida Keys at a place called Other Side Board Sports, Keys Cable, and through personal connections, got hooked up with John at Live, and we were doing this, ocean expedition, circumnavigation. We knew we were going to have a lot of gear, research equipment, camera equipment, all these things, and he had this brand new board that he'd come out with the tunnel hull and the catamaran shape, and it just seemed like a perfect fit. And yeah, we got them sent out there, and they worked really well for us. And we've used them on a number of expeditions, and we've now since moved on to working with partners at Starboard and Badfish more consistently, and using inflatables for a lot more of our trips just because of the logistical components. But we still have some of our live boards that we use for our trips back in upstate New York. And man, when you're doing research off of a paddleboard, there's nothing better. And they're, for being out there in heavy seas, or, it's a really phenomenal craft. So it's a little funky, and some people, might be sticklers and say, oh, that's not a paddleboard or whatever. But I'll tell you what, go paddle couple 100 miles on one and tell me it's not a paddleboard.
Yeah, it looked pretty choppy down there in Bermuda on some of the days. So it obviously came in handy. So it's really stable, right? Obviously with two hulls.
It is. It's super stable. Yeah. And especially once you put some gear on there, the stability increases significantly because you've got that ballast. And so, I mean, it's so stable that with a proper load of gear, you can stand on one foot on the rail and, not even sink the rail underwater.
So you mentioned there were other adventures as well. So what other expeditions have you done?
Well, that's a long list, Nick. But our first trip was let me see if I can get them all in order. So we started out in Bermuda, and we did our circumnavigation, and then we came back and we did our first Erie Canal expedition, where we made our documentary and discovered the microbeads in our local waterways. And then from there,
in New York.
In New York, yeah, in upstate New York. And that was in the fall of 2014 was our first trip there. And then we went back to Bermuda the next spring, and we did a nonstop 20-hour circumnavigation of Bermuda to launch the Beat the Bead Bermuda campaign. And we did that. That was kind of a crazy trip. We actually were paddling around the South Shore of Bermuda in the night time, which is...
Yeah, it's true. It's really, really screwy paddling at night, isn't it? It's weird. Did you get any fish jumping on your board?
We didn't really have too many fish jumping on our board, fortunately, but it sounds like the phenomena of paddling at night, especially in the ocean, is hard to describe. Just everything's reactive, so it's really, really exhausting. I mean, by the time the sun came up, we were like zombies, man. We were,
I'm sure.
yeah.
Lack of
But yeah,
sleep as well.
so we had that, the nonstop circumnavigation around Bermuda, and then we did. There's a few. I might get the orders wrong, but we did a trip on the Big Island of Hawaii into Waimanu Valley with an inflatable SUP to take microplastic samples. I paddled from Oxford to London on the Thames, taking microplastic samples as well. That was really cool. In March of 2016, high water Thames, which was really fun. And we've done expedition in the Alps, done trips in West Australia, done some river stuff. So yeah, we've been around with our expeditions. We were just most recently in the Adirondacks in upstate New York with our youth group. So now our focus more recently has been on our youth expeditions. And so we've been doing those since 2015, but have been expanding that program, and it goes hand in hand with our global youth mentorship program. And so students who complete their projects are then eligible to join us on one of our summer youth expeditions. So unfortunately, the pandemic has put a wrench in things on that front. However, it's a great opportunity to fill you in on the virtual expedition that we're going to be launching at the beginning of August. So we're going to be doing a worldwide virtual expedition where people can basically go on and sign up to paddle, some miles to move our little paddler icon around the world to raise funds for the Global Youth Mentorship Program. And so it's going to be a year-long endeavor, and we're hoping to raise $100,000. So it's about 25,000 miles. So $4.
What's the link with that? Is that up and ready to go or not yet?
It is not up and ready to go yet. But I will definitely share the link when it is. But yeah, that's something that we've got, we're putting together, just, kind of trying to adapt to, the pandemic, and, expeditions are really core to the ethos of our brand and what we do, and something that we really love. And so we've taken this opportunity to, do this virtual expedition and involve the global community.
But that is so cool that you've taken, virtualize expeditions. Because some people trying to figure that stuff out and say, well, how can you do that? But and they've virtualized SUP paddle races as well, which is great. Have you done any virtual races over lockdown?
I have not. No, I have not. But I have been following, what's been happening in the space. And I mean, of course, it's in the ether. So I'm not going to say that this was a completely original idea here to do a virtual expedition. But yeah, it's really fun to see how people are adapting. And, it's so important for us to get outside and to be active and to have that as part of our lives. And, I think, with this pandemic, everyone, of course, has to take the proper precautions. But unfortunately, I think in a lot of parts of the world, people were not able to, delineate between, hanging out, for instance, like hanging out at the beach with a picnic, or going to the beach, so you could, go surf by yourself or go paddle by yourself, and get that thing that you need for your, your personal health. And so I've been really fortunate here in Santa Cruz, whenever there's been beach closures, they've been, kind of on the Hawaiian system, where as long as you're moving, active, doing something, and you're not with other people, then you're good to go. And so that's been really nice. But I know it's been a really challenging time for a lot of people around the world.
Okay, so from virtual expeditions to dream expeditions, if you could do an expedition anywhere in the world, where would you go? It doesn't have to be for work. It could just be for pleasure. Where would you go?
Oh, I love that question. North. I've been dreaming of doing an expedition through the Northwest Passage for a really long time. And I don't think it necessarily would have to be the Northwest Passage, but I think I'd like to go somewhere in the far north, and a route where there's going to be really epic scenery, like maybe some tight type of, fjord-esque waterways, with mountains and cliffs and sea life, orcas, narwhals, polar bears. I think that would be the ultimate.
And a bit of cold temperatures as well. You can handle those, right?
A bit of cold temperatures as well. Yeah. I really love whitewater. So, I've been listening to some of your episodes, and I would have loved to join that trip on the Zambezi as well. So that could definitely fit the bill for me too, in terms of a dream expedition. And the Grand Canyon too, honestly, is one that is really high on my bucket list. So,
well, that was another question: is have people? They must have stand-up paddled the Grand Canyon, but I mean, there's some serious rapids there, and they're grade fives, right?
yeah, it's gnarly actually. A good friend of mine, and a teammate at Badfish, Spencer Lacey, was the first person to sup the Grand back in, I think, 2014 or 15. He did it on a stand-up paddleboard, and he's done it a number of times since. And more recently, he's actually paddled Lava Falls, one of the biggest rapids on the Grand, buck naked. There's photos of that online if you're interested.
Oh yeah, no, I can't wait to see that.
But yeah, it's pretty cool to see where paddleboarding has come in the whitewater space, man. It's people are really pushing the limits. I mean, everywhere, in all aspects, really.
I mean, obviously, just recently, well, a couple of years ago, the South African Chris Burdish crossed the Atlantic on a stand-up paddleboard.
Yeah, man, I followed that trip really closely, and I had the pleasure to meet Chris in Bermuda, actually. We organized an event there, a sustainability event called Protect Blue, and had Chris as a speaker, and got to hear some pretty amazing stories from him.
One he's that an really inspiring guy. Huh?
Sticks out. Yeah, involved a whale or a giant squid or something. He was not sure which, but if you ever have the opportunity to listen to some of his stories, he's really inspiring.
I need to try and hit him up for the podcast. It'd be great to chat to Chris, because we're both from the same town. He's from Cape Town. I'm from Cape Town, so hopefully that'll work in my favor.
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah, definitely. You should definitely have him on.
Yeah. So talking about that, like, if you had a favorite SUP personality you'd like to meet or have met, would it have been Chris Burdish, or would it be someone else as well?
Well, it was really amazing to meet Chris, and he's super inspiring. I guess another SUP personality that I've had the pleasure of spending some time with is Zane Schweitzer, both here in Santa Cruz and over on Maui. And he's really inspiring, just his energy and passion for not only water sports, but also sustainability. So, we really vibe on that level. And then someone else who's been a huge inspiration for us at Plastic Tide since the early days is Bart de Swart. Another one of those really hardcore expedition guys. And, I remember when we were first doing our, early research on expedition stuff, he was kind of the only guy, or one of the only guys, that there was, anything. And he was already had his inflatable SUP bed and was sleeping out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, going between these tiny islands and stuff. It was like, man, who is this guy? It's crazy.
He's crazy. And then that's just the first story I heard about him. He's like sleeping on his stand-up paddleboard in the middle of the ocean. I mean, wow.
Man, and that stuff was like, so... Yeah, and I've actually had the opportunity to meet Bart at the SUP 11 Cities tour as well, which is really cool. So, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I would say I've been fortunate enough to meet, all of the SUP personalities that have really inspired me to this point. But, I'm always looking out for, new people doing really cool stuff.
Sure. So, Christian, what's next for you and what's next for Plastic Tides?
Well, as I mentioned, we're really focused on our Global Youth Mentorship Program. Just recently launched that, and we're aiming to have 100 students enrolled for the 2020-2021 school year. So I've been really head down on that project. And, I've also got a personal project that I've been working on for almost a year now. I'm making a sustainable surf wax called Trees Wax, and so I've been working on that here in Santa Cruz. And that's something that I'm going to be rolling out much more widely here soon. So really excited about that.
Great. And is that actually wax from a tree? Is it sort of sap from a tree that you've created?
Yeah, so it's an entirely plant-based, so it's made entirely from trees and perennial plants, so supporting regenerative agriculture system, and the whole idea is to educate people about the importance of trees, not chopping them down to make paper, but actually, growing them in, agricultural systems to provide for, our daily needs, as opposed to, industrialized monoculture like soy or wheat or, for instance, a lot of the other plant-based waxes out there use a lot of soy wax. And so, that's great. It's not petroleum, but it is almost petroleum in a sense if you understand that agriculture system relies entirely on inputs from chemical fertilizers, which are created from petroleum. So even though it's a plant, like the chemicals that went into that plant came from petroleum. So when you use that to make a wax, especially at large scale, you're essentially supporting that, system. And so I set out to do something different. And also to not use beeswax, which has a number of really amazing properties. But once again, at this point, I don't feel like at the scale that I want to be able to take the product and the price point that I want to be able to hit, that beeswax can be sourced ethically at that scale. And also, there's a lot of people out there who are vegan. And so to be able to check that box for people as well, I think is another great asset. So,
absolutely. Well, yeah, that sounds great. Good luck with that. I mean, hopefully there's so much more we can hear from you in the coming months, because I really want to get into that virtual expedition as well. That sounds great. But how can we follow your work online?
Yeah, so you can follow me personally, Crisscross Shaw on Instagram, and then Plastic Tides at Plastic Tides across all the platforms, as well as at our website, plastictides.org. And you can go there to support us. You can sponsor a youth leader for $20 a month. You can actually have a personal connection with a student and get personalized updates about their projects. Or there's a lot of other ways to support our work, and look out for the virtual expedition as well, because that's going to be really fun, and we're going to keep the barrier of entry really low for that, so people can get out there and paddle some miles and get involved.
Awesome. Well, yeah, good luck with everything. It's been fantastic chatting to you, and there's so much more. So maybe we should try and get you back on sometime, because there's so much more to find out about.
Yeah, I'd really enjoy that, Nick. Yeah, thank you. And this has been great. Hopefully we'll talk soon.
Thank you for listening to SUP FM, the #1 podcast for stand-up paddlers wherever you are. If you like what you've heard, please leave us a review on iTunes. Until then, we'll see you on the water.